So it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Slyvia Burns, CIO of the FDIC, to deliver some opening comments. And on behalf of the CIO Council, I want to thank them. I want to thank Slyvia for her support during this summit and in the leading up to and development of. So let me hand it over to Slyvia. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here on day 2 of the Data Center Sustainability Summit. I had the pleasure of taking part in the summit's first panel yesterday morning with my fellow CIO council members, Ann Duncan, who is the CIO at the Department of Energy, and Vaughn Noga, who's the CIO at EPA. Vaughn and I are 2 of the tri-chairs of the CIO Council's Enterprise Operations Committee, and Ann, along with Cherian, who moderated a separate conversation yesterday, is a tri-chair of the Innovation Committee. When GSA presented their idea for this summit to us several months ago, I was thrilled, and the 3 of us wholeheartedly backed it up and said, you know, we have to co-sponsor this. This is exciting stuff. And we did it because we thought it was important to highlight the role that IT has in federal sustainability efforts. Not to mention, all of us are personally vested in sustainability and in reducing our carbon footprints and tackling this critical challenge as part of our role as leaders in federal IT. On yesterday's panel, we talked about IT's role in helping the federal government achieve the energy and emissions related goals that have been established by the Biden-Harris administration. We focused in particular on how adopting cloud solutions, including IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, can get agencies easy access to sustainability-focused services because vendors are doing what Vaughn called yesterday continuous modernization. Importantly, though, we discussed that it's not as easy as simply purchasing cloud solutions. There are cultural challenges within our organizations, and barriers still need to be lowered to accelerate agency cloud adoption. I hope that ultimately this summit prompts more conversation about collaboration opportunities between industry and the public sector on IT and sustainability. Turning back to the agenda today, if you couldn't tune into yesterday's session, just like Alexis was mentioning, don't worry, they're recorded and they'll be posted online for at a later date for viewing. Today we have a strong lineup again of expert speakers on the agenda. After the opening keynote, we're going to jump into a panel discussion about an innovative approach being taken to revitalizing a community in Massachusetts by building a data center. And we'll look at how that model might be replicated elsewhere in the US. We'll also talk about topics like factoring sustainability into the IT supply chain and procuring hardware for sustainable solutions, as well as the challenges of building a skilled workforce that can take advantage of the sustainability benefits of IT modernization. We'll finish the day with 2 roundtable discussions, one with former government officials and one with industry experts. These roundtables will examine the future of DCOI and share recommended approaches for measuring data center optimization in the federal government going forward. Finally, we'll end the day with a closing keynote from Schneider Electric. It's a busy agenda that should be very informative. I hope you're all looking forward to it as I am. Thank you and enjoy the summit. Let me hand it over now to Pete Saronis to introduce today's keynote speaker.
Thank you, Slyvia. And I can't say it any other way. It's beyond an honor to introduce a colleague, a pal, a friend, Dr. Brian Anderson, Director of the National Energy Technology Laboratory. Just to set a little context, Brian, not to steal your thunder, but brag a little bit about the wonderful institution you work in. Folks, if you've heard of the national laboratories, the NETL, the National Energy Technology Laboratory, is one of 17 that tackle our nation's most critical scientific challenges. You hear that a lot, from combating climate change to discovering the origins of our universe. What's beautiful about the NETL, which is one of those national labs, and it is the research arm of the United States Department of Energy's Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management. Say that 3 times. But this is what I like, little factoids, before we get to the great Brian Anderson. It encompasses 3 research sites and 2 offices in 5 separate states: Alaska, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Texas, West Virginia. It has a 104-year history of conducting and sponsoring research and development for the benefit of the American people. And if I have to give one fun factoid, is the history of the NETL site stretches back to 1910, when the newly created Bureau of Mines in the United States Department of the Interior, Slyvia Burns, you will love that, former CIO of Interior, opened the Pittsburgh Experiment Station in Brewston, Pennsylvania, 12 miles south of the great city of Pittsburgh, the Burgh, for Manny Brothers. And I know, Brian, you're a West Virginia guy, but you got a lot of love regardless of the backyard brawl. But Brian Anderson, he leads this amazing institution. Yes, the director of the laboratory. He earned his bachelor's degree in chemical engineering at West Virginia University, Go Mountaineers, has a master's and doctorate in chemical engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He was named the 2020 laboratory director of the Federal Lab Consortium for Tech Transfer. And oh, by the way, he's the executive director for President Biden's Interagency Working Group on Coal and Power Plant Communities and Economic Revitalization. Brian, sorry for stealing some of that, but the floor is yours, and what an honor to see you and hear from you yet again.
Pete, thank you so much. And I need to hire you. You do a great job of introducing NETL, knowing our history, and I really appreciate the introduction. I also appreciate the organizers of this meeting on this topic, and just an honor to join you this morning. I'm really excited about the panel that's coming after me. I'm going to do my best to stick around. As Pete mentioned, not only am I just honored to be the director of the National Energy Technology Laboratory, but also was asked by the White House, by the Senior Climate Advisor, Gina McCarthy, and the Director of the National Economic Council, Brian Deese, and Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, to help with revitalization of our energy communities across the country. Steve, we've had the long name as the Interagency Working Group on Coal and Power Plant Communities and Economic Revitalization. The shortened name is the Energy Communities Interagency Working Group, because what we're trying to do is revitalize the economies of the communities that have built the economy we know nationally for the last 100 years, like NETL as well. And I'm going to talk about some examples, both the Interagency Working Group and some of the exciting efforts we're working on at the National Energy Technology Laboratory. But I'm going to back up just a second, and I've been asked, can I set the stage for where we're going nationally in the energy transition? I'm sure over the last day we have talked about getting our economy to a net carbon zero by 2035, getting our electricity sector, or our economy by 2050, and our electricity sector there by 2035. And I'm here to tell you it is a challenge, but it's a doable challenge because we're putting all the right pieces of the puzzle together. At NETL, we've been working on carbon capture and sequestration for about the last 30 years, 30 of our 110-year history in the Pittsburgh region. And we've seen some real tremendous breakthroughs in decarbonizing our fossil fleet. Now that needs to yet be deployed, and there are lots of levers in the private sector and in the markets that need to come into play. And we're seeing a tremendous deployment of low carbon electricity production through early stage investments of the Department of Energy in reducing the cost of our solar panels, decreasing the cost of wind turbines, and increasing the availability and the capacity factor of those. We're working really hard on things like grid scale storage, so we can mitigate intermittency, and also working on lots of critical technologies like the advanced nuclear reactors. That there's certainly a tremendous interest from the private sector that has the opportunity to even provide rampability and a bit of load following in the nuclear sector that we haven't had. So there are a lot of pieces that are coming together. And when we look at that deep decarbonization just on the electricity sector, which certainly when we think about data centers, they today account for about 2% of our electricity use. Certainly, we are increasing the amount of computational power across the federal government, across the private sector, and this is a crowd I don't have to tell about the potential growth that might be a factor of 20 or 30. And so when we think of the future electricity load of data centers, it's going to be pretty significant. Data centers are some of the most energy intensive type buildings, and a lot of that comes to electricity. So if we focus on decarbonizing electricity sector, we have huge components of our economy that we miss. And so as we drive through the decarbonization of the electricity sector and simultaneously trying to decarbonize the transportation sector, the industrial sector, and the commercial sector, which data centers would fall into, we have a multi-pronged approach to try to do that. Part of that is through the electrification of the vehicle fleet, yet again, pushing back to the electricity sector, making it even harder to deploy reliable, resilient electricity at low cost and decarbonize when we get to deep decarbonization. And then other components of the transportation sector with the possibilities of hydrogen playing a role in transportation and in the industrial sector. And many of the ways to get to hydrogen are through electrolysis using low carbon. And so a lot of our pathways run back into that electricity sector. And so when we think of how this is going to couple in with sustainable data centers into the future, one might initially just think, well, if we decarbonize the electricity sector, then we're good to go. And I'm sure the discussions over the last day and further today are going to say that is not simply the case. As we drive forward in all of these decarbonization efforts across the four sectors that I mentioned, we're going to need a lot more integrated energy systems. And so I'm going to take just a moment and define that. About 4 years ago, about 4 years ago now, the National Energy Technology, the Idaho National Energy Technology Lab, NETL, the Idaho National Laboratory, which is our DOE National Laboratory specializing in nuclear energy, and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, our sister lab in Golden, Colorado, focused on renewable energy. We got together and realized that there's a tremendous opportunity for the future of our energy system at the interface, at the deeply coupled hybrid energy systems, when we put all of those pieces of the portfolio together and not just use the grid to create an interconnect, but to look at how we can leverage each of those technologies together and not just solve the decarbonization problem in the power sector, but also in transportation and in industrial and in commercial. And so the opportunities that exist there, coupled into the building sector, the energy intensive industries like the increasing load of data centers across our country, give us a really good opportunity to find those key parts of that particular part of our energy usage and energy production ecosystem, where we can put together components of, say, it's advanced small modular nuclear reactor systems, carbon capture and carbon utilization and storage, direct air capture, as well as energy storage and the use of creative opportunities for energy storage and partnership with big load centers. And so with that, there's just a lot of opportunity in front of us. And we've put together these three laboratories in what we call a tri-lab consortium, focused right at that interface of our deeply coupled hybrid energy systems. And so I just wanted to set the stage a little bit on the energy sector and where we're going. There's certainly lots and lots of innovations that we're coming up with, not just in that integrated energy system, but in many of the different components, like continuing to drive down the cost of solar panels and driving the supply chain back into the United States, as well as wind turbines, both onshore and offshore, and energy storage, nuclear, and then carbon capture and then direct air capture. So I want to shift gears just a little bit, because I am looking at the panel that's coming afterward. And again, I'm so excited about some examples of how we can couple economic revitalization, energy communities. We can bring economic and environmental and social benefits to communities that are disadvantaged across the country, not just energy communities, but environmentally disadvantaged communities and economically depressed communities. And so the interagency working group, I mentioned it was put together by the White House. It was actually the Executive Order 14008, that is the Executive Order on tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad. And it's Section 218 establishes this interagency working group. And when I say interagency, many of the agencies here today are involved. It's housed in the Department of Energy, but with deep commitment from the Department of Commerce and EDA, from the Department of Treasury, Transportation, Health and Human Services, Labor, the Department of Interior for sure, the EPA, the Office of Management and Budget, the Appalachian Regional Commission, and the Department of Agriculture. And what we are doing is we're putting our efforts together to find first the ways we can invest in energy communities with revitalization efforts, find good projects, and build up the communities and community capacity who have been economically depressed in many cases for the past few decades. And to make sure that as we navigate the energy transition that I was at least describing in part, as we navigate that energy transition over the coming decades, that we ensure that for jobs that we're displacing in historical energy communities, that we have an opportunity to reshore manufacturing as we invest trillions of dollars into our economy and in the new clean energy economy. And so a lot of this effort has already begun, even prior to the standing up of the interagency working group. And so one project I'm going to highlight is a project in Mineral Gap. Well, it's the Mineral Gap Data Center in Wise County, Virginia. That's in southwestern Virginia, south of West Virginia. And it is coal country in Wise County. And Wise County has been affected historically by the coal industry's decline. And the project, the Mineral Gap Data Center, used a reclaimed mine site to build what truly is a 21st century data center. It's powered by a solar array. It's supporting the community. It created new jobs, as also supported by clean energy. And it really showed an investment, not only the investment in the data center itself, but the idea of taking a reclaimed mine, taking an area that has seen a environmental disruption, and reclaiming it into the next generation of technologies is what's truly exciting. And certainly our colleagues at the Department of Interior are in the process of deploying billions of dollars, $11 billion in the abandoned mine land reclamation program under the infrastructure bill, and billions of dollars in plugging orphaned oil and gas wells around the country. These are truly opportunities to take an environmental legacy and turn it into economic opportunity. So the Mineral Gap Data Center, it's about 65,000 square feet. It's 22 acres. It's a 45 megawatt data center. And it is accommodating some growing and evolving data requirements and really providing some much needed job opportunities for locals that are looking to transition out of the coal industry. It's coupled with some partners around the county to provide workforce development as well. And so another really interesting and exciting one to me project was discussed yesterday in the Iron Mountain Data Center in Boyers, Pennsylvania. This data center located about 220 feet underground, using limestone mine water for cooling as a data center. As Pete mentioned in the introduction for me, that 1910 mine and the Bureau of Mines that was the initial facility for NETL is still there. And for NETL, our Pittsburgh site is our home to our artificial intelligence and machine learning data center. The machine is named Watt after James Watt, and that artificial intelligence and machine learning data center. When we're looking at the options for really advancing our data center into the future, there is a real great example with the underground mining capabilities. So at NETL, one of our big areas for us as a laboratory, we are the only government-owned, government-operated laboratory out of the 17 in the Department of Energy. So not only do we do our in-house research, and I'm going to give a couple highlights later, but we also manage a wide range of portfolio with and for the Department of Energy. And that portfolio is it's about 1,000 R&D projects. We're valued about $5 billion. There's cost share from the private sector of about $1.5 billion, and we have over 400 project partners on these 1,000 projects. So it's not only the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, our steward office, but we work really closely with the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy on building technologies, on the Vehicles Technology Program and geothermal. We also manage a significant part of the R&D portfolios for the Office of Electricity and the Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response. And now, as we're rolling out the bipartisan infrastructure law, there is an increased opportunity for us to start the seeds of the change of our energy sector to get us toward the decarbonized electricity sector by 2035 and the economy by 2050. And the Department of Energy, in case you didn't know, there's about $62 billion of new authorized funding in the infrastructure bill. They're across really 60 new programs. And we're working hand in hand, NETL is working hand in hand with new offices within the Department of Energy that have been stood up to help deploy this infrastructure. This is the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains, and the Grid Deployment Office are three new offices in the department. And so as we look at the opportunities to deploy the next generation infrastructure, it includes provisions like clean energy demonstration on current and abandoned mine lands. Tremendous opportunity for us to leverage both the Department of Interior funding on reclamation and to have clean energy demonstrations on these mine lands. So in-house at NETL, we are home to a real robust computational infrastructure, as most if not all, of our national labs in the Department of Energy. In Morgantown, that's where we house our supercomputer. It is one of the fastest supercomputers in the United States, and all three of our lab sites are connected to the supercomputer in Morgantown, and we're in the process of designing our next data center. To take our next generation of our supercomputer in Morgantown, put it in a computational science and engineering center with visualization capabilities and collaboration capabilities, and a world-class sustainable data center, bringing our not just our supercomputer but our enterprise architecture into that next generation data center that we are in the middle of the design today. In Pittsburgh, I've already mentioned the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning. And what is really unique and powerful about our Watt machine is really about our ingestion rates and our storage capabilities. It's a 16 petabyte storage facility, but not the hugest, but it is one in which we can read data in a very high throughput in order to enable the next generation of artificial intelligence and machine learning. I like to mention that our data rate is about if you print our data on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper with 1-inch margins, double-sided, and stack the paper from Washington, D.C. to St. Louis, we can read it about 4 miles a second is our data rate. So there's a real opportunity for us as we expand the Pittsburgh Center. And then in Albany, our Albany folks do a lot of work in the materials science space and in geospatial data analytics. And of course, so we have a data center, enterprise data center in Albany as well, and coupling these together with our other two field sites, as Pete mentioned, in Texas and in Alaska, is a big challenge for us. So we have a lot of R&D projects that leverage this infrastructure, and one I've already talked about a little bit. Our integrated energy systems is really a tremendous opportunity for us to couple electricity sector with low carbon fuels and converting CO2 into fuels and chemicals. And then we have a really exciting initiative, not just with the 3 laboratories that are applied that I mentioned, but also the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. These 4 laboratories are partnered with the Department of Energy in a net zero laboratory initiative. So our 4 laboratories are going to be taking our infrastructure, Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions to net zero over the coming decade. And so we will be working not only on site with decarbonizing our on-site usage, but with our power supply partners on driving forward the technologies that we have been developing in-house in the Department of Energy with our partners. And this is the call for partnership. I have the perfect audience here We've been working with GSA on our power purchase agreements and many of our other sister federal agencies. There's power in us putting all of our efforts together. There's power with the checks that we write through our power purchase agreements. And if we put our heads together, we can start driving the economy and creating the market that we need to see. And so that's the call to those who are in the PJM interchange with our Pittsburgh site and others that might want to partner with us on decarbonizing our Scope 2 emissions. Another really exciting technology that we've been working on is how we can use materials, the fossil materials, the carbon-based materials, in a much more advanced and value-added way. And so we've had some tremendous breakthroughs in converting waste coal material that certainly the Appalachian Basin and the Powder River Basin are loaded with, use those waste coal materials to convert into high-value products like graphene and graphite, and even using waste coal and converting it into new computer memory devices. So we have a prototype memory device. It's a memristor that has shown lower energy input using the carbon-based platform instead of silicon, lower energy input, higher, faster memory switching, and potentially lower manufacturing costs. So another opportunity to reinvent even the hardware components in the computational area by switching to truly innovative carbon-based materials. Not only can we make carbon-based memory chips, but we're also making, I mentioned graphene, and we're in fact able now to manufacture graphene, which is a tremendously interesting material, both in its strength and its electronic properties and its thermal properties. We've been able to reduce the cost of manufacturing three-dimensional graphene by a factor of about 100 or 1,000, and in some cases maybe even 10,000x in lowering the cost of that manufacturing, potentially opening up the world to the implementation of new materials from low-cost sources, and in fact cleaning up legacy environmental waste. And then one last area that I want to highlight, and I know I've been talking very fast, I just possibly because I'm very excited about what we're doing and the opportunities in this space, is on the backs of our artificial intelligence and machine learning center, and really as a foundation for the usage of our artificial intelligence and machine learning platform, is a system that we've developed called the Energy Data Exchange over the last decade or so. It is not only a database for all of our projects and partnerships that we have out of NETL and the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, but it has tremendous built-in capabilities for applying artificial intelligence algorithms for data uptake, incorporating metadata as you're bringing in data, using multiple disperse and seemingly non-interacting data sets, and the ability then to fill in key data gaps and use machine learning and artificial intelligence to be able to transform data from particularly challenging sources and improve those databases so that we can meet needs of the partners. So we have some real products there that are in collaboration with, most of the time, with many other national laboratories and academia and other agencies, including how we can take computational science and improve the performance of materials through ab initio calculations all the way through predictive calculations for physical properties, and offshore research and development, not for offshore risk assessment, as well as for carbon storage in the offshore and onshore, and building in our ability to take artificial intelligence and apply it to extremely large data sets that we have in the subsurface, so we can drive down the risk of carbon storage, of geothermal production, of any of the subsurface activities that we have going on around the world, and be able to use the machine learning to create real-time decision-making capabilities and real-time visualization capabilities. And we have some challenges and prizes that we've been running to bring in industry partners into this space, so we can truly use our science-based artificial intelligence paradigm that we have, that's science-based, bringing the physics models together with empirical models and driving technology forward. So we use all of these platforms. We not only use our computational systems at the laboratory, but across the Department of Energy complex, driving toward the exascale machines. And another exciting area is how we can couple or expand our computational fluid dynamics capabilities into the exascale architecture, and then some exciting collaborations with manufacturers of wafer-based engines for accelerating the capabilities in artificial intelligence and machine learning, as well as physics-based models, and showing some capabilities of even improving computational power on the order of 30 times through the use of wafer scale engines and recreating architecture and software together. So with that, I'm going to close that it is really an exciting time. It is daunting for us to look forward of decarbonizing our electricity sector over the next 13 years. But it is a challenge that I think we are up to, we the country is up to, and the Department of Energy, we look forward to partnering all across our sister federal agencies, not only in tackling the climate crisis, but also not leaving communities behind, and leveraging all of our capabilities in the computational space and building some great collaboration. So with that, I'll hand it back to the organizers.